Alright, here we are. Welcome to the Richard O'Reilly Show. I am Richard O'Reilly. Today is the 7th of June in 2017, and we have got a whole lot of news going on today. As always, it's always a big news day, and it is a big news day today. The big story right now is we had a testimony from top intel chiefs on Trump and Russia. Politico reports key moments from Intel Chief's testimony on Trump and Russia. Now, here's the big thing. Here's the thing that we've been looking out for, the thing that we've been saying all along about this whole Russia thing and this whole idea that Trump tried to interfere with the investigation. We all knew from the beginning that was completely false. And last night, or not last night, but it's pretty much been confirmed at this point because the Dan Coats has said that he has never felt pressure, that's a quote, never felt pressure to intervene in the Russia probe, never felt any pressure from the Trump administration to interfere with the investigation. He's confirmed it, it's confirmed now. It's been confirmed, and yet of course the Democrats and the media and the whole liberal establishment and even a lot of Republicans, they won't let it go. They won't let this whole Russia thing go. They won't let the whole interference with the investigation, interference with the election. They won't let it go. They're not going to give it up. They're not even satisfied with this answer here. So there's some more. Here we go. I'll give you the full quote from Dan Coats. He says, "My response to that was in my time of service, which is in interacting with the President of the United States or anybody in his administration, I have never been pressured, I have never felt pressure to intervene or interfere in any way with shaping intelligence in a political way or in a relationship to an ongoing investigation." That's a direct quote, that's the full quote from Dan Coats. So Dan Coats is saying that there's never been any pressure, never been anything from the administration, no attempt to interfere or intervene with the investigation. So this whole thing should be over at this point. This whole interference with the investigation, it should be over. But of course, Democrats are not satisfied. Let's see, what do we have here? He was pushed. Dan Coats was pushed over and over again on specific conversations that he had with Trump himself and with officials. Democrats pushed him on that. And he said, look, I can't talk about these private conversations in such a public hearing. That's what he said, and he said that over and over again, and the senators would not stop pushing. So here's the thing. So Senator Angus King, an independent, which by the way, independent pretty much means that you're a Democrat. He's from Maine, and he says, "I don't understand why you're not answering our questions," he says, exasperated apparently. So they're saying that he's not answering the questions, even though what he's saying is that, look, the conversations were private and they were confidential, and there were probably some things that maybe shouldn't be known to everybody. Because look, it's a conversation between an intelligence official and the president. There could be a lot of things in there, in the conversation, that shouldn't be known to everybody. Look, I get the whole idea of transparency, but there comes a point where transparency can go too far, and you can put people at risk, and you can put the country at risk by releasing information that shouldn't be released, especially when you're talking about the president and an intel chief. So this whole idea that they dodged the question is just ridiculous, because how are you going to answer that question? You're going to pull up the conversations, the full transcript right there, and tell the entire world, because there was press there and everything, tell the entire world about your private conversations between yourself and the President of the United States. How are you going to do that? That's not going to happen. And they knew it wasn't going to happen, but here's the thing. They don't care. The senators, they don't care. They knew that they wouldn't just give away the conversations, but they didn't care. They didn't care. So So I have some more quotes. "You can keep trying to trip me up," Rogers told Senator Kamala Harris, a Democrat from California. Big surprise there. "Senator, could I get to respond, please, ma'am?" he asked as they talk over each other. "No, sir," Harris said. No. So we have a Democratic senator pretty much just saying, "No, you can't speak," to Rogers. Great. So this is the level of respect that we have now in these hearings. I mean, since when have you ever had someone in a hearing not being able to answer a question, being spoken over by a senator that's supposed to be asking questions? And of course, it's a Democrat from California, because they don't want these people to speak, because they know that if they push too hard, the evidence is going to come out that this whole Russia thing is completely ludicrous, and there's nothing there. So they don't want to push too hard. They don't want to be specific. They don't want to ask the direct questions. They want to ask, oh, did he interfere with the investigation? They don't just come out and ask, was there collusion? Was there interference? They don't ask that, because that would be too direct. And if they ask that, they're going to get an obvious no, not at all. So instead, they ask about interference with the investigation, which Dan Coats said didn't happen at all. There's no evidence to support it. The evidence was this so-called Comey note, which has never been confirmed, and tomorrow night we're going to be seeing Comey testify. And there have been reports that I've seen that, to be fair, haven't been confirmed, but I've seen reports that say that Comey is getting ready to say that no, there was no attempt to interfere in the investigation. So they're going to keep on running with this. They're going to keep on going. They're going to just keep on trying to push this whole narrative, and it's going to collapse in front of them one day. One of these days, the whole narrative is going to collapse, and it's going to be a great thing to see. We might have to be patient, but it's going to happen eventually. Believe me. So we have a whole bunch of things going on here. I mean, between Angus King and Kamala Harris, and this whole thing was honestly just seemed to be a bit of a joke. I mean, we have the head of the NSA, Rogers. He says that he's never been directed to do anything illegal or immoral. I don't think that really relates to the whole Russia thing. It's something that's completely unrelated. You can say what you want about that. And Coates said, "I just hate to keep repeating this. I am willing to come before the committee and tell you what I know and what I don't know. What I'm not willing to do is share what I think is confidential information." That was the answer from Dan Coates. But apparently, there's the left and the libs and the Dems. They're not satisfied by that. They're not satisfied with that answer, where he said, look, I will give you what I know, but it's confidential. I can't do it where there's press around and the entire world will know about it, but I'm willing to give you the information. And he also said earlier on that he felt no pressure to interfere in the investigation for any political purposes or anything like that. So they're not satisfied, and you saw it, I saw it, all of the headlines in these left-wing news outlets saying, oh, the whole thing, the testimony was a joke. They didn't answer the questions. They wouldn't say whether or not Trump interfered, but they did. They did say whether or not he interfered, and they said no. But they don't talk about that. They ignore that, and they say, oh, he wouldn't release the information about the conversations. He wouldn't release that specific information. But you can't do that. You can't release that specific information. At least not in such a public setting. Because like I said, there was press there and everything. It was very, very public. I mean, everyone knows what happened in there. So if you were to release all of these confidential conversations and information that they have, it would be a disaster, and you just can't do that. And there is absolutely no legitimate reason for these senators to think that they could do that, but they just did it anyway. They just did it anyway. They don't care. They just did it. Why? Because it's just a joke. They're trying to drag the whole thing on as long as they possibly can. To me, what I see, I think the whole goal of this is to just drag it on until the next election. Because they want to use this. They want to use Russia against Trump in 2020. But here's the thing. Even if they do manage to keep the investigation going until then, and they do manage to go after him on Russia during the election, it's not going to have any effect whatsoever because people just aren't buying it. They just aren't buying it. There's this whole idea that they like to sort of spread. They try and make it seem like this is something that everybody buys. Like this is something that everyone in the country is all behind, and everyone wants answers about Russia. Everyone is asking about Russia. Everyone is wondering about Russia. But that's not the case. Republicans, no Republicans at all, except for establishment ones, think that. The base does not buy that at all. And Democrats, there was a poll out that only about half of them buy into the whole Russia hacked the election thing. Only about half of them. So no Republicans at all, half of Democrats, but apparently this is a whole national thing that's been front page news for the past 6 months. It's been non-stop. That's why I talk about it so often. I talk about it so often because it's just been ongoing. And the media will just not let it go. They won't let the whole narrative go because, think about it, I mean, if the whole narrative goes, if the whole narrative just fades away, what kind of attack are they going to have? What are they going to do? Because they haven't had an effective attack against Donald Trump ever. They've never had an effective attack, the whole media. When they attack him, it's for things like Russia, and it's for things like cursing and being politically incorrect. It's not for actual things that people care about. So the media has no idea what they're doing, so they want to push the whole Russia thing, which they've been doing for absolutely ages. Even during the election, people forget that during the election, this was a Hillary campaign talking point. This was Hillary coming out and saying, like, oh, Trump said that Vladimir Putin is a good leader. Maybe he's a puppet. Maybe he's a Putin puppet. Putin puppet. I said this in a tweet earlier. Putin puppet and Russian agent is like their new racist and sexist. Remember how the old joke used to go that they would say racist and sexist over and over and over and over again, and they would never ever stop repeating it? That's the same thing now with the whole Russia thing. Instead of saying racist, 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 they say Russia, 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 Russia. It's the same thing. They have the same tactics, it's just a different word. So it's a joke. I mean, the whole thing is just a joke, and honestly, it just needs to end as soon as possible. And you know what? I'm very glad that Donald Trump decided to not interfere and not try and stop Comey from testifying, because it's best to just let this go and let this happen naturally, and let the investigation go, and just let them investigate and get to the bottom of things, and come out and realize what we all know, and say, look, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. There's nothing. There's no collusion. There's no Russia hacking the election. Not just here. They're not hacking the French elections because there were leaks about the Emmanuel Macron. That's not hacking the election. It's just email leaks. It happens a lot. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because I have another article from Politico here that says Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat, says that Russian cyber attacks are much broader than what has been reported. So he's saying that the cyber attacks are much broader than has been reported so far. How much broader could they possibly go? So far, they've said that they hacked the national election, local elections, and the French election. And maybe even Brexit. Maybe they even had to do with Brexit in a way. I saw an article. I didn't read the whole thing, but it was like, oh, Brexit was not a democratic... Brexit is not democratic at all. Don't let the election fool you. Brexit is not democratic. How is Brexit? There was literally a referendum. That is as democratic as it gets. That's direct citizens voting for policy. That's as democratic as it can possibly get. I didn't read it. I saw the tweet. I didn't go on to read it because I knew it was going to be ridiculous. I can only imagine that they're going to talk about Russia. They're going to say, oh, it was because the misinformation campaign. By the way, what is it? What did Russia do? First it was, oh, they hacked the election directly. Then it was, oh, they leaked the emails. Then it was, oh, they spread the fake news. And now they're back to, oh, they hacked the election directly. They've gone full circle. So what is it? Did they do everything at once? They even say, Mark Warner even says that they were not successful. That seems like it's pretty far-fetched to me. So they hacked voting machines, they leaked emails, and they spread fake news all at the same time, and they weren't successful. I mean, they must have had some really awful hackers and some really awful fake news writers, because if all of that took place and they weren't successful, well then, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that seems like a little bit much if they weren't successful in what they were doing. So the whole thing is just such a mess, and notice how the ones that are pushing the hardest for things like this, it's always Democrats. It's always Democrats. That's what they always do. Whenever it comes to a Russia thing where you have, oh, a top senator or a top congressman has said, oh, this whole Russia thing, it's the worst, it's bigger than Watergate, it's the biggest scandal of all time, it's always Democrats. Mark Warner is a Democrat. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. So he was the one who said, and it's, by the way, it is also, like I said before, they've gone back to the whole direct hacking of the voting machines. They've moved on from emails and fake news. They've moved on to, yeah, they just straight up hacked the election. It wasn't meddling, it was direct hacking. It says Russian cyber attacks on the US election systems. Cyber attacks on the election systems, so they directly hacked voting machines? This is coming from the people, the same exact people who said, just as late as October last year, they said, oh, come on, hacking an election, hacking a United States American election is impossible. Because this was when Donald Trump was saying, oh, rigged, because he was trying to say that the media was rigging it against him, and how all the Democrats, they're all so corrupt, and they're going to try and rig the election. And it was speculation, to be fair, you know, he didn't have evidence, it was speculation. I mean, it was speculation based on sort of like educated guesses, though, because we kind of know that Democrats are sketchy, and the media is sketchy, and they were probably trying to do things. They were definitely, in terms of the media was definitely trying to keep him from winning. That is guaranteed. You cannot even argue against that. The entire media, except for like maybe one or two outlets, everyone wanted him to lose. And they were trying to make him lose as hard as they possibly could. They put all of the energy that they had into it, and it didn't work. He won anyway. So Trump was saying, oh, rigged election. And then during the debates, he said, oh, he was asked a question. He was asked if he would accept the result of the election if he lost. And he said, I'll keep you in suspense. He said, I'll keep you in suspense because I need to look into it. I need to see if it was legitimate. Which, by the way, is a perfectly normal thing to do. That's something that happens almost every election. It happened this year. It happened with, who was it? It happened with Jill Stein. Jill Stein's recount. And they were saying, look, it's just to make sure that the whole election was fair and that there wasn't any fraud or there wasn't any interference and everything going on. It's just to make sure that our elections have integrity. That was her excuse for the recount. So it's a normal thing to say, look, we'll look into it. after the election, we'll look into it and make sure that everything was legit. So that was a totally normal thing for him to say. That was absolutely a normal thing. But of course, the media, they treated it like treason. They treated it like he was saying that he hated democracy and that he actually wanted to just be a dictator. But now they're doing the same thing. Because their whole thing was, come on. It was Barack Obama himself even said, you can't hack an American election. It's impossible. It's not possible to rig an election in this country. So they said that. It's impossible to rig an election in this country. It's impossible to hack an election. And now they've flipped. Now they've said, no, Russia directly hacked voting machines. They directly tried to hack the election. It wasn't just meddling. They've moved on from meddling. Now they've gone to just straight hacking. Cyber attacks on voting systems. So this is where we're at right now. And before, you know how I said there's Democrats that like they push it the most? Now, that's right. They are the ones who do it the most. But Republicans are not that much better when it comes to the whole Russia thing. Remember how a few days ago I said that they were looking for bipartisan legislation? Well, here we go. It's happening today, Wednesday. I'm not sure if it happened yet or not. It could be happening right now as I speak. It could be happening later on. It could have already passed by the time I put this video up. But today, the Senate will be taking up new Russia sanctions. New sanctions. More sanctions. This is just ridiculous. This is ridiculous. The whole sanctions thing. Here's the thing about sanctions. Sanctions are supposed to be a tool that you use to get someone to the table. You use sanctions as like a diplomacy kind of thing. That's what we did with the first round of sanctions on Russia in Ukraine. We basically said, hey, look, you can't take Crimea, so sanctions, and the whole point of the sanctions is to get them to the table so we can talk it out and negotiate and, do diplomacy like we should be doing. But what happened? Sanctions passed, we had sanctions on Russia, and we did nothing. We did absolutely nothing. There's been no attempt at diplomacy, like, at all. And the media, they treat the idea of getting rid of these sanctions like it's treason, like it's heresy, like you can't get rid of the sanctions. They were saying that, look, if Trump gets rid of the Russia sanctions or rolls back the Russia sanctions, then that will prove that he's an agent. It won't, though. It won't prove anything, because it's just logical to get rid of the sanctions, because the whole point of it was to get them to the table, to talk about it, and to talk about the situation in Ukraine, and to, use diplomacy instead of force, like Democrats want us to for some reason, like Rachel Maddow does. Rachel Maddow wants us to have NATO troops on Russia's border. Rachel Maddow said on her show, she said that if Trump takes the troops, NATO troops, off of Russia's border, then that proves that he's in it with the Russians and that he's a Putin puppet. So this is where we're at right now. This is the Democrats saying, look, if you don't escalate with Russia, well, that means you're a Russian puppet. If you don't want war with Russia, that means you're a Russian puppet. I don't even know where to go from here, because you can't even... It's like you can't even talk to them anymore. You can't talk to them without them saying, oh, Russian puppet, yeah, Putin bot, yeah, that's right. We all know you're being paid by Putin, okay? We didn't even need to listen to it. That's what they say all the time on Twitter. They say it everywhere. They say, oh, come on, Russian puppet. Oh, look it. You don't want war with Russia. You want to be soft on Russia. You don't want to de-escalate. Russian puppet. That's what they do. That's their tactics. And Democrats in the Senate, in the establishment, that'll be their tactic pretty soon as well. When elections come around, they'll be saying, oh, look at these Republicans, Russian puppets, they don't even want sanctions, they don't even want war, they don't even want to escalate with Russia. Putin puppets, Putin puppets. So, the Hill reports that the Senate is trying to insert Russia sanctions into a popular Iran bill. A bipartisan group of senators is attempting to enact more severe sanctions against Russia by inserting them into a popular sanctions bill on Iran. So, first of all, the fact that this is a bipartisan group should set off alarms right away. Anytime you hear the word bipartisan should be a dirty word. Because bipartisan means, look, both parties are corrupt. And bipartisan just means that both parties come to agree together on something. They come together to agree that, look, we're both corrupt. Let's do corrupt things together. This whole bipartisan group putting together Russia sanctions, it's just a sad thing to see, because these are Republicans that spent years, 8 years under President Obama, saying, alright, we will get Congress back. We just need the White House. We just need the White House in order to get our plans through. And then they laid out a 200-day plan. How'd that plan go? It went nowhere. It went absolutely nowhere. They said, oh, look at it. We have this ambitious agenda. We have all of these great goals that we're going to accomplish in the first 200 days. Well, time is up. And you guys got nothing done. Nothing done whatsoever. The president has had to govern by executive order because Congress is so inept. And instead, you do this. You talk about Russia sanctions that, first of all, normal people, American working class people, the people that lost the election for Hillary Clinton and the Democrats, they don't care about Russia sanctions. Are they going to go to the booth, to the voting booth, and sit there and say, you know, I was going to vote for Trump, but man, this one was for Russia sanctions, and called out Trump on being a Putin puppet and said that Putin had a PP tape of Trump. I don't know, it's a hard one. On one hand, I have jobs, and I have healthcare, and I have infrastructure, and I have making America great again. And on the other hand, I have Russia. It's a hard choice, isn't it? That's not going to be a hard choice at all. Nobody is going to be sitting there saying, oh man, you know, maybe the people who talk about Russia, maybe they're right. Maybe that is what we need. Maybe Russia really is our greatest threat and our greatest enemy in the world, like John McCain says. Goofy John McCain. Nobody thinks that. Nobody thinks that at all. So here we go. More from the article. Top senators like Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the heads of the Senate Foreign Relations and the Banking Committees, and other lawmakers are aiming to attach the Russia sanctions as an amendment to a bill that cracks down on Iran's ballistic missile program. The legislation will likely be taken up by the Senate on Wednesday. So Wednesday is today. This could be happening right now for all I know. And by the time the video is up, it'll probably already be outdated, what I'm saying right now. But I'm saying it because it's significant, and it just shows that Mitch McConnell, the leader, the majority leader, he's meant to be this. The majority leader should be a populist who's going to fight for what people really want. But here we have Mitch McConnell here, who's fighting for Russia sanctions. Russia sanctions, Iran sanctions. Why would we add? First of all, why would we even sanction Russia? And I know it's because, oh yeah, hack the election interference, Russian hacking. That's their reason, but they don't say that. They don't say their reason. They're just passing the sanctions. You know why? Because that is their reason. The reason is nothing. They have no reason. Because the whole election hacking thing is completely ludicrous and just completely, there's no evidence for it, it's baseless, it's all speculation. So they're gonna pass these sanctions for no reason. How do you think it's gonna sit with Russia? How do you think it's gonna sit with the Russian people? Because I'm out here trying to, I'm out here trying to say, look, war with Russia is ridiculous, and we shouldn't do that at all. Why would we even consider doing that? Why would we go to war with Russia? That makes no sense. That makes no sense at all. Think about it. I mean, Russia has already been crippled by sanctions. Their economy has been crippled because of all these sanctions. And we're going to add even more. We're going to add even harsher sanctions. We're going to cripple them even more. At what point do the Russian people stand up and say, hey, America, these sanctions are ruining our economy. Our lives are ruined because our economy is ruined because you decided to sanction us. We're not for that. We want war. We want to fight because people, they don't realize this. They don't realize that you can't just throw around these sanctions on everybody and it'll just be cool. Imagine if us living here and we had an economic superpower say, you know what, America, we don't have any reason but just sanctions. Have some sanctions. Ruin your economy, cripple your economy, ruin your citizens' lives. What would our reaction be? Our reaction would be, no, maybe we don't want that. Maybe we want to fight back against that. And we will try and use diplomacy as much as we can, but there's going to come a point where it won't work anymore. And right now, with Russia, it doesn't work at all. We have no diplomacy going on with Russia at all. The fact that Trump even met with Russian ambassadors was a big controversy. Oh, meeting with Russian ambassadors? Oh, man, Putin puppet, Russian agent. See, that's just because, here's what I have to say about this whole Russia thing. The reason that I think that they're doing this whole Russia thing is because they see Russia as like this big threat. They don't realize that Russia is just another country, and Russia, they say, oh, they're trying to become a new superpower. Vladimir Putin said himself, he was like, no, we're not a superpower. We don't really want to be. America is the world superpower, and we understand that, and we get that. We're not gonna try and challenge them. But apparently the whole idea is, oh, Russia wants to be the new world superpower. But that's just not true. It's just not true. They see Russia as this evil empire. So therefore, any interaction with Russia is seen as treason in their eyes. Just imagine if you thought, for some reason, don't ask why, that you thought that the UK was the greatest threat to America, that the UK was our greatest enemy. And then you saw the president meet with the Queen. You would say, oh, yeah, Britain's puppet, Elizabeth puppet, Queen Elizabeth II, yeah, you're her puppet. You would say that because you see them as like a hostile power. But people don't. People don't see Russia as a hostile power, but the establishment does. So when they see Trump talking to Russian officials, they say, oh, Russian puppet. They say it with absolutely everybody in the whole administration. They say, you spoke with a Russian man, you spoke with a Russian banker or a Russian official, Russian puppet, Putin puppet. Because that's their whole thing. That's all they know. They see Russia as this big threat. But no one else does. See, like, the whole thing with Russia, this is a theory that I had. And do I have evidence? Not at all. But it's just a theory. It's speculation. The reason that people hate Russia so much in the establishment, the reason they hate Russia so much is because, think about it. Russia, out of all of the countries in Europe, is probably the most prominent right-wing country in Europe. I mean, Russia is they're all into traditional values. They're very right-wing when it comes to religion and all that. They're Orthodox Christians. And the rest of Europe is like centrist, center-left, stuff like that. So, that's what I think. I think that's why they hate Russia so much, because they see Putin as like some fascist dictator who oppresses all of the all of the poor minorities that they all love here. And he doesn't let in the refugees. He doesn't have unfiltered immigration laws like everyone else in Europe does. So they go after him because of that. That's my theory. And it could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, and you know what? I will acknowledge that if I am. But that's just speculation, because I can't see any other reason. Because, the Cold War's over. And you have guys like John McCain, who maybe they do think that the Cold War is still going on in their own little minds. Because, John McCain grew up and it was always, Soviet Union, the biggest enemy America's ever had, and he was in Vietnam. So maybe he's still in that Cold War mindset? I don't know. A lot of senators and congressmen are really old as well, so maybe that is their whole mindset. But I think it may be deeper than that. I think it might be a lot deeper than just Cold War mentality, just haven't really gotten over it yet. I think there's more. Let's keep on going in the article. Let's see. Senator Lindsey Graham, great. He offered a third bill. They're talking about the bills, how many bills we have about Russia sanctions. He offered a third bill this year that would allow Congress to veto a decision by the president to roll back Russian sanctions. This is what we're doing now. So we're going to now, Congress is now going to block Trump from rolling back Russia sanctions. Since when has that ever been a thing? Since when has Congress ever said, alright, we have these sanctions, and if the president decides maybe these sanctions aren't necessary, well, we'll just override that? When has that ever been a thing? So now, Congress is pretty much just saying, oh, well, Trump's a Putin puppet, so we can't trust him with Russian policy. So if he wants to roll back Russia sanctions, then we're not going to let him do it. We won't let him do it. So this is a total disrespect of the president. It's a disrespect of the executive branch. You should be able to roll back sanctions as a president. Because especially when the sanctions, there's no purpose for them. The whole Ukraine thing, that makes sense. Alright, have sanctions for that. But don't just leave them there. Use the sanctions to bring Russia to the table and have, diplomacy. Have diplomacy going on and say, okay, look, you can't just jack Crimea. We're going to have to talk this out and come to a conclusion and come to an agreement so that we can not have World War III with Russia. That just makes sense. But instead, they say, no, we need sanctions. We need to leave the sanctions on. And then, if the president says, maybe you shouldn't have sanctions, we just block that. We just say, no, you can't do that. As the president, you can't block sanctions for Russia. Russia specifically doesn't say anything about the Iran sanctions. So if Trump wants to say, oh, no Iran sanctions, that's fine. You can roll back Iran sanctions. But Russia sanctions are special. Russia sanctions you can't roll back. So this is just unprecedented. They talk about breaking tradition and how, President Trump breaks tradition all the time. This is a break of tradition. This is Congress, a Republican, Lindsey Graham, saying, oh, if the president rolls back Russia sanctions, we won't let it happen. This is a Republican. This is the state of the party. This is the Republican Party. These are the people that are meant to be in there fighting for, conservative, traditional values and economic populism. But what are they doing? They're fighting for Russia sanctions. They're fighting against the president when it comes to Russian sanctions. Directly. It's a mess. Right now, Republicans and the Republican Party is its own thing. The party is its own thing. We have the Democrats, the Republicans, and Trump. We have a three-party system now. Because Republicans in Congress are just, you can't rely on them to pass actual, real policies that people care about and that actually matter. You can rely on them to talk about Russia all the time and do nothing but talk about Russia and Russia and Russia and Russia, and it'll never ever end. So it's just sad to see, you know? And I mean, even on the Democrat side, we have a bit of a split. Honestly, the whole two-party system thing, I think, just doesn't cut it anymore. And I'm not going to be an activist. I don't go out. I'm not the kind of guy to say, oh, a two-party system is so evil, we need to break it up. That, to me, doesn't care. As long as the parties are actually representing the people and fighting for issues that actually matter and not talking about Russia all the time, then I don't mind. But when you have two parties that are just so out of touch and have no idea what they're doing, I think we need a new system. I just think we do. Is it going to happen? Are we going to have new parties or a new system? I very much doubt it. It's very unlikely. If you want to change the party, it's better to change it from the inside than to try and start a new party. That's just my opinion. But I think something needs to change with the Republican Party. I think we need new leadership. We need new people in there. We need new congressmen. Lindsey Graham, John McCain, not going to cut it anymore. Get them out of there. I mean, John McCain's retiring. I don't know about Lindsey Graham. But it's just a sad thing to see, you know? And I mean, since I'm on the topic of Russia, I wanted to move to, you know how I said earlier that you can't talk with Democrats about anything anymore? Because all they do is just yell about Russia when you try and say anything. There was a little, an interesting Twitter battle, a little Twitter war between Joe Scarborough and Sean Hannity. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, come on. Twitter wars, I mean, really, do we care about this? I'm talking about this because here's the thing. This relates to the whole Russia thing because it just shows that the Dems and the liberals are they're just out of their minds and they're just unhinged. I mean, even Joe Scarborough, I mean, who's supposed to be a Republican, he said that he's a Republican. He's definitely not. There's not a chance that he is. So I'll read for you the whole tweet, the chain. As of now, there could be more tweets later on, but right now what we have Hannity tweeting out, "Poor liberal Joe and Mika continue their daily emotional meltdown. Hilarious video montage tonight at 10 on Hannity Fox News channel." And then Joe saw that tweet and went off. Joe saw Hannity's tweet and he went on this 3-tweet rant about Russia and Hannity and his ratings, and it just went to show, I mean, how much Joe Scarborough has just, I would say, fallen, but he was never very high up to begin with, you know what I mean? Joe says, "Comrade." Oh, it's my phone. I don't know if you can hear that. My phone's going off right now. This is the quality recording that you get on the Richard O'Reilly show, by the way. My phone just goes off in the middle of the show. Alright, the phone's gone. Alright. Anyway. So Joe says, "Comrade, your continued obsession with those who refuse to be apparatchiks for Russia suggests resentment and envy. You are obsessed. We'll send a care package to the motherland for you. How about a Beatles bootleg LP and blue jeans? You can wear them on your next gig at RT. Comrade, you have screeched for a decade about how irrelevant I am. And yet, my little Russian friend, you obsess over me endlessly. So sad." Joe, what the hell was that? Joe, you calling him comrade over and over again? You're saying, oh, your next gig on RT, Russia Today, am I right? RT, Russian propaganda. RT is pretty much like, they say, oh, it's state-run media. It's state propaganda. You know what else is state-run media? BBC. Is BBC British propaganda? It's just a news company. And so is RT. I mean, of course, there's a pro-Russia sort of bias in there. But the BBC, I mean, do you think the BBC is going to say, oh yeah, the British government is so horrible? No. Because it's a state-run company. So, it's equivalent to the BBC in that it's a state-run media company that maybe has a bit of like a pro sort of government slant to it. But in general, it's just normal news. But no, RT is apparently Russian propaganda, and if you even appear on RT, you're a Russian puppet, Putin puppet, Russian puppet, Putin puppet, Russian agent. They go after people for going on RT like it's some kind of like propaganda network. Like RT, people who bash RT have probably never even been on it. If you go to the website, it's actually very normal. It's not like the North Korean state media. It's just like a news site. I mean, you know, you can say what you want about its quality, but it's a news site, and it's RT, and it's just, you know, it's news from the state that maybe has a pro-government slant to it, but it's not any worse than the BBC is, so you can't say that it's this whole Russian propaganda site. So I just hate that whole... I hate it when they go after RT, because even though I don't have any, like, connection to it, I'm not passionate about, oh yeah, RT, the best news site ever. It's not, but I'm not for them. I'm not for this whole RT bashing about how, oh, RT, Russian propaganda network, because it's not. And then he calls him a Russian friend. He says, oh, if you refuse to be working for Russia... Joe, what are you talking about? Like, at least with Trump, they have, like, they kind of say, like, oh, well, he's a Russian puppet because this, and this. Sean Hannity is a Russian agent, or a Putin puppet. How? Joe just says that. Joe says, oh yeah, Sean Hannity, he pretty much is, I mean, he implied it heavily in his tweets. He said, yeah, Sean Hannity is a Russian agent, a Putin puppet. Okay. How do you prove that? And he says, oh, because he refuses to work for Russia, so he goes after me. He says, oh, I'm Joe Scarborough never goes after, he's loyal to America, and he never pushes that Russian propaganda like Sean Hannity does, right? Sean Hannity with his Russian propaganda all the time. All Sean Hannity ever does on his show is talk about how, when he's talking about Russia, he talks about how there's no evidence, but people push for it anyway. They have no reason to push for it because there's no evidence, and there's never any evidence. They make up these fake scandals. They say, oh, he released information to the Russian ambassador, even though later on it came out that it was about ISIS and it was about, you know, Middle East strategy, and they were like, oh, well, it was about ISIS, but it was from Israel, so Israel must be really angry with us, right? And then Netanyahu came out and said, no, we're fine. We agree with Trump. We're not objecting to him sharing the information at all. And then the media said, oh, okay. And then as soon as that came out, the story was dead. Notice that. Notice how as soon as it came out that, oh, the whole sharing of information thing was totally bogus. There was no, oh, sorry, I guess we were wrong. We apologize. We were wrong about the whole Russia thing. We're very sorry. We take it back. There was none of that. It was just, oh, and there was nothing. Netanyahu came out and said, okay, yeah, he shared the information, but it was, we were fine with it. It was about ISIS, it was about Middle East strategy, and we're totally okay with it. Netanyahu said that. And the media, no response. No response. They've been pushing this whole story about sharing the information with Russian officials for so long at that point, and then Netanyahu comes out and says, "Oh yeah, it was fine. We don't have any objections to it," and the story just died right there. Just like how before the election there was the whole the accusers against Trump, the sexual harassment accusers. They all said, "Oh, Trump, he did this, and he did that." And then immediately after the election, all of that died. Have you heard about any of these accusers anymore since in the past 6 months? I know I haven't. The story died immediately. So it's all It's all hoax, it's all fake news, it's all... Don't even bother listening to it, because it's all... There's nothing there. There's nothing there at all. So this whole... this whole Russia thing, it's been 50 minutes I've been doing nothing but talking about Russia. And I hate it, but it's a big story right now. So let's just go ahead, let's move on. Let's move on to something else. Donald Trump has picked Christopher Wray to be the FBI director. NYT reports that he has picked him, and that Mr. Wray played a pivotal role in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, providing oversight of operations as the country adjusted to a new reality. And he is not known as partisan, but he has donated to Republicans over the past years. A total of $35,000 he's donated to Republican campaigns and committees. So he is a very good pick. I mean, everyone was worried about how he would pick a politician, but he didn't do that. This is an intelligence official who's has experience. So there's nothing unprecedented about this. But I said it on Twitter, and I'm going to say it again. How long until the Democrats start saying Christopher Wray is a Russian puppet? How long until they start saying that? How long until they start saying that? At the minute that Mr. Wray comes out and says, okay, look, the Russia thing is bogus and there's nothing there, there's no collusion, there's no interference. As soon as he comes out and says that, Democrats will say, oh, Christopher Wray is a Russian puppet. We demand that he steps down immediately. They do that. That's what they're going to do. They're not going to let it go. They will not let Russia go. So even if Mueller comes out and says, okay, there's nothing there, the special counsel, Mueller comes out and says there's nothing there, Dems will go after him ruthlessly. They'll go after him and say, oh, Mueller's a Russian puppet. Alright, next. Carry on with the investigation. Because they won't know how to respond to that. They need to keep the narrative going. They won't let the narrative die until 2020. Because they want to win. And they don't know how to win. Or, you know what? That's wrong. They do know how to win, but they refuse to do it. They know that they can appeal to people by being populist and by being nationalist. But they refuse to do it because they have their big money donors, and they have special interests, and they have lobbyists, and they have everything. So they refuse to do it. So they say, okay, we need to appeal to people, but we can't be populist, we can't be nationalist, we can't be against free trade. We need to be for free trade and for elitism. So they need a new strategy. If they can't use any of that, they come out and they say, okay, here's the plan. We just call Russia, we call Trump and everyone around him Russian puppets. And if anyone says there's no evidence, we call them Russian puppets too. That's what they do. I mean, if anyone comes out and says, no, this Russia story is not like a thing, it's speculation and it's fake news, they say, oh, Russian puppet. Alright, next. That's what they do. They don't know how to argue. They don't know how to do any of it. And you might say that, unbelievable, my phone has gone off again. You believe that? Who's calling right now? I'm gonna let it go. Alright. It's gone. Anyway, where was I? I was talking about Mr. Wray and how people say that he might be partisan because he donated to Republican candidates. That's a valid point, but at the same time, you can't get someone who's perfect. You're never going to have a completely, non-partisan guy, no matter who you pick. So overall, I'd say a good pick. He's a safe, mainstream pick, NYT says. A safe pick from a president who at one point was considering politicians for a job that has been historically kept outside of politics. Now that is just completely wrong. that is completely wrong. Intelligence has been used for politics for so long now. We've been seeing it with the leakers. I mean, we had the leaker yesterday. We had a winner who leaked NSA documents to the media, who leaked reports to the media. So intelligence has been used in a partisan way. Absolutely. Absolutely. You cannot even say that it hasn't been. And by the way, speaking of leakers, Michael Moore, he wants to be Julian Assange so bad. Michael Moore wants to be a big player in politics so bad. He made his films and his documentaries, and he was still just irrelevant. So he has a new idea. He has a new idea on how to become relevant. He made a site, and it's like a safe haven for leakers about Trump. So this is where we are. So now we have a party, a Democratic Party, that says leaking about Hillary is treason. Leaking about Trump is heroic and will give you a safe site where you can't be tracked to leak. I mean, they said that leaking Hillary's emails was an act of aggression from Russia, and that was unfair to her. How it wasn't fair that we had her emails leaked because that cost her the election, they said. Okay, so then how is this any different? When Russia does it, when Russia supposedly, allegedly, takes these Hillary emails and gives them to WikiLeaks, that's treason, that's an act of war, that's an act of aggression, we can't have that. But then Michael Moore comes out and says, I'm going to give you guys a safe haven where you can leak about Trump all you want, and no one will be able to track you. Leak as much as you possibly can. I want all the leaks you can possibly get. And the media, where's the media? Where's the Democrats saying, oh, this is an act of treason, this is an act of aggression by Michael Moore? Where are they? Where's the Democrats saying, oh, we need to put Michael Moore in jail for this. We need to give Michael Moore some sanctions. We need to punish him. Democrats, where are you? Where are the Democrats? I can't hear any of you. Because they don't care about leaks. They just care about it when it's their people. They don't care about leaks in general. They just care about leaks when it's their people, like Hillary. Excuse me. They don't have principles. They don't care about leaks when it's just like when it's Trump. Suddenly now leaking is this big heroic thing. They're defending Winner. By the way, with Winner, was there any coverage? Did any Democrats come out and say, "Oh, this is a travesty. We can't have this. We need to crack down on leaking in our government"? Did any of them say that? None of them said that. None of them said that. Because they don't care about the policy. They don't care about the principle of being against leaking. They only care about leaking when it happens to Hillary, and when it happens to John Podesta, when it happens to the DNC. When it happens to Trump, it's heroic. It's an act of heroism to leak about Trump. But leaking about Hillary and John Podesta, that's treason. So I don't even want to hear it about these Democrats and this Russia thing. I have one more story before we go, and it's not a political thing. It turns out that after all, dinosaurs are actually scaly. So for those who don't know, there was this whole thing about dinosaurs a while ago, where scientists said that dinosaurs were actually feathery. They were pretty much like giant birds. But now there's been new evidence to suggest that that's actually not true, and that dinosaurs were indeed scaly like reptiles. So that is fantastic news, because I never could get used to the whole giant chicken T-Rex walking around the place. I could never get used to that. So thank God dinosaurs are actually scaly. I put that at the end because it's just a nice little thing to take a break from the whole political thing, you know? Sometimes you need to just take a break and just relax and just not focus on Russia and all that and on all the bickering. Just take a break, relax a little bit, and just, take in some news stories like this. So, we're about at the hour mark right now. I'm going to go ahead and end the show right here. Thank you so much for listening to this. I have no idea why you are. It's just because you're a great person, and you love to hear about all of this news, and you love to hear me talking about it. And I really, really appreciate that. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.